All right, let's dive into Leon Uris's Trinity. It's a classic, really a cornerstone of historical fiction.
Yeah.
Published back in '76, right in the thick of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. You can imagine exploring Irish identity and resistance. It really struck a chord.
Yeah, let's talk about timing, right?
Absolutely.
And the thing is, Uris didn't just, whip this up. He spent 7 years.
7 years.
7 years traveling all over Ireland, talking to everybody, historians, politicians, you name it, just every day, folks. He really wanted to immerse himself, get the full picture.
That's incredible. 7 years of research. So what kind of things did he uncover in those 7 years digging into Irish history?
Oh, tons of stuff. But one thing that really stood out, even shocked him, was the sheer brutality of the penal laws.
Appeal?
Yeah, these laws, they were imposed by the British back in the 17th and 18th centuries, and they basically stripped Irish Catholics of their fundamental rights, land ownership, education, the whole nine yards. Uris was blown away by how these laws created this system, this really deep-seated inequality that, echoed for generations.
Wow. It really makes you think the conflict in Northern Ireland, it wasn't just a recent thing, was it? Those roots go way back.
Exactly. It's all connected, and that's where Uris's own background comes in. You see, as a Jewish immigrant himself, he had this deep understanding of what it meant to face oppression, to fight for survival.
Right.
And you can feel that empathy woven into the story, especially in how he portrays the Irish people, their resilience, facing such incredible adversity.
I can see how that personal connection would make the story so much more powerful.
Mhm.
So let's get into the story itself. There are three Irish families at the heart of it all, right? The Larkins, the Boyles, and the MacDonalds.
That's right, the Larkins, Boyles, and the MacDonalds.
And their lives are all intertwined.
Intertwined against this backdrop of massive historical upheaval. And it's through their stories that Uris really digs into those big, timeless themes. Nationalism, class struggle, the brutal reality of colonialism. He doesn't shy away from the human cost of it all.
Yeah, one of the most powerful parts of the book for me was his depiction of the Great Famine. Just heartbreaking stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's one thing to read about the famine, but Uris makes you feel it. You see families torn apart, people starving in the streets. It's a stark reminder of how quickly a society can unravel, when faced with such devastation.
It's a major turning point in the story too, right? I mean, the famine really fuels that fire of resentment towards British rule.
It absolutely does. And out of that resentment come figures like Connor Larkin,
Connor Larkin.
this young guy who becomes the symbol of resistance. He's charismatic, defiant, and willing to risk everything for Irish independence.
I remember him. He was quite a character.
Oh, yeah.
But I also remember thinking he could be a little reckless. Some of his decisions, they put others in danger. Did you get that sense at all?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Connor's actions definitely raised some big questions about the ethics of rebellion. Is violence ever justified? What are the limits of personal sacrifice? Uris doesn't shy away from those tough questions. He shows us both the heroism and the potential for destruction that can come with fighting for a cause.
And then you've got this forbidden love story woven right through all the political turmoil. Just adds another layer of tension to the whole thing.
It does. In that romance, it really speaks volumes about the deep social divisions in Ireland at the time. You've got Protestants and Catholics, landowners and tenants, all trying to navigate this incredibly fraught landscape. And sometimes, yeah, love ends up getting caught in the crossfire.
So we've got history, we've got politics, we've got romance, and a whole lot of moral complexity. It's no surprise this book became a global phenomenon.
It really tapped into something, that's for sure. And it's interesting to think about why Trinity caused such a stir when it came out. I mean, it was a bestseller, but it also sparked a fair amount of controversy.
Right. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think Uris presented a perspective on Irish history that some people just weren't ready to hear. He challenged that dominant narrative, and that can be uncomfortable.
Right.
He forced readers to confront a side of history that had often been silenced or marginalized. That act of bearing witness, acknowledging the suffering and the resilience of the Irish people, it was unsettling for some, made them question their own assumptions and biases.
And that's why Trinity is still relevant today, all these decades later.
I think so.
It's more than just a history lesson. It's a challenge to examine our own understanding of the past and how it shapes the present.
Exactly. And that's what we'll explore next. How does Trinity's exploration of history, identity, and resistance resonate with the world we live in today? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. I'm looking forward to digging into that.
It's amazing how Uris can take these massive historical events and make them feel so personal. He doesn't just talk about the famine or the politics. You really see how these things impacted ordinary people's lives.
He zooms in on the human side of history, doesn't he? We see families struggling to survive, lovers torn apart. It just makes it all so much more relatable.
Exactly. And that's what makes Trinity such a powerful read, I think. It's not just some dry account of facts and dates. It's about real people, real challenges.
Okay, so we've talked about Uris's research, the historical context, the big themes. But what about the actual writing? What makes Trinity such a captivating read?
Well, for one, Eurus is a master at creating these vivid, memorable characters. They're not just names on a page. They feel like real people with their hopes and dreams and flaws.
Yeah, Connor Larkin, he's a great example. We already talked about how he's a symbol of resistance, but he's also got this stubborn streak, right?
Yeah.
And a tendency to act without thinking things through.
Oh, totally, he does. And that's what makes him so interesting. He's not some perfect hero. He's a flawed human being trying to do what he thinks is right in this really complicated situation. And Eurus doesn't shy away from showing us both his strengths and his weaknesses.
And the women in the story, they're not just sitting around waiting for things to happen. They're strong, they're resilient, they're characters in their own right.
Absolutely. Fiona McDonald, for example.
Yeah.
She's this fierce, independent woman who is determined to make her own way in a society that's constantly trying to put her in a box.
Right.
And her relationship with Connor, it's so compelling because it's not just a love story. It's this clash of wills, of a battle for equality in a world that's stacked against them.
And Uris's descriptions of the Irish countryside are just so evocative. You can practically smell the peat fires.
Yeah.
Hear the fiddle music in the pubs.
Oh, for sure. He has this incredible ability to just transport you
Yeah.
to another time and place. He captures the beauty of Ireland, but he also doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of life there in the 19th century.
Yeah.
The poverty, the overcrowding, that constant struggle for survival.
And he does it all with such rich, descriptive language. But at the same time, the pacing is fantastic. He balances those quiet, character-driven moments with bursts of action and suspense. It keeps you hooked.
You're so right. He masterfully weaves together the personal stories, the political intrigue, and those big historical events. It creates this narrative that's both sweeping and intimate.
And the dialogue, it feels so authentic, like you're listening in on real conversations from that time.
The dialogue is key. I mean, it reveals so much about the characters, their personalities, their beliefs, their relationships with each other. It just adds this layer of realism. It really pulls you in.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Historical context, major themes, the characters, the writing style, basically everything that makes Trinity such a remarkable book. But what about its impact? It wasn't just a commercial success. It had a real cultural impact, too.
Right. It sparked a renewed interest in Irish history and culture, especially the struggle for independence. It really raised awareness of the injustices faced by the Irish people under British rule, and I think it challenged a lot of preconceived notions about Ireland and its people.
Yeah, by presenting this more nuanced, sympathetic portrayal of the Irish experience, Uris really forced readers to confront their own biases and assumptions.
Exactly. He humanized a conflict that had often been portrayed in very black and white terms, and that was bound to create some controversy.
It did.
Yeah.
Some critics accused Uris of romanticizing the IRA, of presenting a biased view of the conflict. Others said he oversimplified complex historical events. It seems like the book sparked some pretty intense debates.
Oh, absolutely. And that's not a bad thing, right? It shows how powerful storytelling can be, how it can really get people talking, get them thinking critically about the past.
And that brings us to why Trinity is still so relevant today, decades after it was published. It's more than a history lesson. It's a reflection on identity, the fight for justice, the power of the human spirit.
It is. And it raises some really important questions about the ethics of rebellion, the limits of sacrifice, and the legacy of historical trauma.
So what do you think, listener? Does understanding these historical struggles for freedom and identity help us navigate the complexities of the world today?
It's a question worth pondering, for sure.
Absolutely.
And maybe exploring Trinity for yourself will help you come to your own conclusions. It's a journey worth taking.
It's wild how a book written so long ago can still feel so relevant today. Makes you wonder if we ever really escape history.
I think that's what makes a story like Trinity so powerful. It reminds us that the past isn't just some, distant thing. It's still shaping who we are, how we see the world, even the choices we make today.
One thing that really hit me about Trinity was how Uris captured this, spirit of a nation on the verge of transforming. You see this incredible mix of hope, despair, anger, determination. It's like the whole country is holding its breath, just waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, he really nails that feeling of being caught between the old and the new. You have those clinging to tradition, those fighting for change, and then those just trying to make it through the day.
It's not all about the politics, though, right? It's about the personal struggles, too.
Mm.
People falling in love, raising families, dealing with loss and betrayal, all against this backdrop of this massive historical upheaval.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what makes the story so relatable. It's not just about these like abstract ideas, it's about how those ideas actually play out in real people's lives.
Did you have a favorite character
Mm.
or one you found particularly relatable?
You know, I was really drawn to Fiona MacDonald.
Fiona, yeah.
She's such a strong, complex character. She's fiercely independent, but also deeply loyal to her family and community, and she's not afraid to fight for what she believes in, even when it means going against the grain.
I can see why you'd connect with her. She's definitely a woman ahead of her time.
She is. And her story, I think, it speaks to something universal, something about all of us. That desire to find our place, to make a difference, to be true to ourselves.
And it's interesting how Uris ties those personal journeys into this bigger story of Irish history. He shows how our lives are shaped by forces outside of our control, but also how we can resist, fight back, and carve our own path.
And that's why Trinity is more than just a history book. It's about the human spirit, our capacity for love, loss, and that enduring power of hope.
So for anyone listening who hasn't read Trinity yet, what are you waiting for?
Really, it's a journey through history, a love story, a story of resilience, and a powerful look at the human spirit. It'll stick with you long after you finish it.
I couldn't agree more. And who knows, maybe it'll even get you talking around the dinner table, thinking about how history shapes our world today.
Because that's what great literature does, right? It makes us think, question, and talk about the things that really matter.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Leon Uris's Trinity. We hope this conversation has inspired you to explore this epic tale for yourself and consider the power of storytelling in shaping our understanding of the world.
Until next time, keep diving deeper. There's always more to discover.